All right, boys and girls, the first thing you're going to do for your daily monster project is you're going to find your black construction paper. Make sure it's long ways horizontal on your table, and you're going to glue 3 of these white papers and line them up, kind of like we're framing the white papers onto the black papers. So start with one and make sure you glue this with a glue bottle all the way to the edge of the black paper. So open up your glue bottle, shake and squeeze, and just put 1 dot of glue in each of the corners of the white paper. You don't need a single drop of glue in the middle. You just need a dot on each of the 4 corners. And then line that white paper up with the edge of the black paper and leave the tiniest space on the side. On the top and bottom, make sure you have kind of an even space right here. It's kind of like an inch or so. And then press that white paper down. Now take your next paper and do the same thing, dot of glue in each corner. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then glue your next white paper right next to that first white one. Leave a tiny bit of white in between, and then make sure it kind of lines up on the top and bottom here with an inch on the top and bottom. And then finally take your last white paper here and then glue it on the end. So they should kind of fit evenly. If they're not quite fitting evenly on the paper, you can kind of scoot the first 2 down a little bit so that the third one fits. There should be a little space in between each. Okay, so now I have my papers lined up kind of on my black frame here, and I'm going to start to use my black paint. So on your tray, you have your brushes and your water cup and your rag, and then in the black cup, you have the black watery paint. And then you might not need the colorful paint today, so just leave that to the side. So take just a little dab of the black paint with your paintbrush. So dip your brush in the black paint, and then just put a little tiny spot on the first square. You can put 1, 2, or even 3 little spots of paint to get a big enough glob here. And then start to move your paint around. You can blow it with your mouth. It's okay if it accidentally touches the frame. You can move it around with your hand so you can kind of make the paint drip different directions. If you feel like the paint is not moving very much because it's soaked into the paper, you could add a little bit more in the center spot. Careful not to drip. You might even want to hold your hand like this, and then you can do it again. The only thing is though, you don't want the paint in the middle to be too complicated. You want it to be just kind of a simple splatter. Now I can wait for this one to dry a bit and then start my next 2. So do the same thing, put a couple dabs, 1, 2, maybe even 3 or 4 to get enough paint on there. Now I don't want it to go off my paper too much, but if it does touch the frame, that's okay. And I think I'm just gonna leave that one like that. Notice how I'm just dabbing the paint on the paper. I'm not like pressing the paint into the paper. I don't want it to soak in too much. I want it to be really liquidy so that when I move it around, I have enough paint to kind of squish around on that paper. Okay, that looks pretty good. So far they're a little bit liquidy and watery. So I'm gonna take a Kleenex. And what I'm gonna do with my Kleenex or my paper towel, both will work, I'm just gonna kind of dab a little bit of the wetness off. So I have a clean Kleenex here. I'm just gonna dab like this and press my hand down. And this is just gonna soak up a little bit of the wetness so that I can start to draw some things around it. So you can see now it's not any painty on my hand. I've kind of soaked up the wetness. Now I can take the same Kleenex and then get a clean spot and do this for the next 2, or I might need a different Kleenex if this one is too dirty. So I don't want to use this spot again on here. It's going to make some dirty marks. Get a clean area and then just kind of dab off the next 2. So you could probably get away with just using 1 Kleenex if you keep folding it to a clean area. So these look pretty good. They look like pretty random ink splatters right now. So now I'm going to take my Sharpie, and I'm just going to use my medium-sized Sharpie. And I'm going to think about, what do I see in these ink splatters? I have to move them around. Maybe I see something this direction. Maybe I see something in this direction. Maybe I'd like to have them all in this direction. So I'm going to think about what I see. Then once I see something, start to add some details that you think could represent a monster. So maybe this monster, maybe his head would be on the top here. And maybe his legs would be down here. So I would start to draw whatever I think I want to see in this monster. And I'm just going to use my marker for most of the details. And I'm going to add as much details as I can to make sure that people see what I see. Just like our artist. Start to add some details that you think are funny, creative, things that you think might help us see this funny monster that you see. So I would add maybe at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 details around the monster. You can add on top of the wetness here, but it is a little bit wet, so be careful. You might want to wait till it dries a little bit more so you don't rip your paper. So I think that monster is almost done. I can keep adding some details here. Maybe these are some wings. And then if I feel like I finished this monster, I can take my markers, my marker box, and I can color in a little bit of detail. So maybe if I wanted to have some little bit of yellow in his eye, I could get a marker and color that. Or some maybe like pink on his toes, I could color that. Or maybe if I wanted a background, maybe this monster is jumping high above this little tiny city, and I can start to draw some of those little details in here. So you can even draw a background around your monster. Maybe he is high up in the clouds. I can draw some clouds around him. So be creative. These are supposed to be really funny and silly monsters.